Forever Dog.
Welcome to Forever Dog. You can listen to this podcast ad-free on Forever Dog Plus by signing up at foreverdogpodcasts.com/plus. And make sure to follow us on social at Forever Dog Team and check out all of our podcasts at foreverdogpodcasts.com. Thank you for your support and enjoy the show.
Forever Dog.
Hi everyone, it's me, Ben Blacker, the creator and host of the Writers Panel. You may know me as the co-creator of the Thrilling Adventure Hour. I've written for television, for film, for comic books, for audio. Check out our Audible series, Cut and Run, which stars Meg Ryan, Darcy Carden, Sam Richardson, and an all-star cast. It's really fun. We're very happy with how it turned out. You can check that out on Audible. I started doing this podcast almost 10 years ago because I wanted to have conversations about the business and process of writing with the people who were actually doing the writing of the television and films that I loved. I've learned so much over these almost 500 episodes. And there's no slowing down. As long as everyone keeps making great TV and great movies, I'm going to find out how they did it. It's endlessly fascinating to me. And if you're the kind of person who watches DVD extras, it's probably fascinating to you too. I'm lucky that there are so many of you who do find these conversations interesting and hopefully inspiring, as I always do. It's 2021. I'm recording this in early March. And I think the last time I recorded an intro was like a year ago. So it seemed like a good time to do that. Hey, how are you all doing? What a year. Was it great for you? Probably, right? I mean, how could it be bad? Ugh. This has been an interesting, year and a half. Thanks to all of you who have continued listening to the podcast. We have slowed production because who wants to record a podcast, right? I assume we all sort of had that feeling last year. Like, is it worth it? I should just sort of lay low and hold close my loved ones. So I hope you did that. And I hope, you were overall healthy and safe and kept yourself sane. We did have some good episodes last year. I was really happy to meet and talk to a lot of those creators and writers. It was a lot of fun. My year was, of course, strange. A good thing that came out of it is that, God, probably in mid-March of 2020, my wife was like, hey, we should put on a show. You should do a Thrilling Adventure Hour show. People are stuck at home. They want to watch something. They want to take their minds off the world for an hour. Let's see if there's a way for us to do that over, Zoom or something similar. And she's smart and she was right. And we did a thrilling show and it was a great success and people really wanted it. It took her about 3 weeks to talk me into it. And over the course of that time, we realized there was not at the time any all-in-one virtual venue, somewhere you could buy tickets and also watch the show. There was nothing that you could do where you got a producer as part of the show. So again, my wife is very smart. And so she suggested we create one. Between us, we kind of knew how to do this. She's in the nonprofit world and she's pretty tech savvy. So she could work with some charities and figure out where the money could go from these endeavors. And I know how to produce a show. And I had the network to sort of reach out and ask people if they wanted to do shows. So that's what we did. And between March of last year and March of this year, we did about 60 shows. All kinds. We did, one of our first big shows with the Mr. Show reunion. Bob and David got the whole gang back together and did a show. We did a Wet Hot American Summer reunion. That was for the Biden campaign. So I'm saying, we're probably responsible for getting him elected. I got to do some fun, weird stuff that I really wanted to do, including a read of the Briscoe County Jr. Script with Carlton Cuse and Bruce Campbell and a lot of the returning cast, but also some actors who I really love. I got to do a read of the Heat Vision and Jack script with Jack Black and Rob Schraub, and we couldn't get Owen Wilson, and so Taika Waititi joined us and did that, and like it was bonkers. All this stuff. John Hamm was in it. Like we had a lot of fun doing a lot of shows. We wound up raising over $1 million for various charities through all the shows. So it feels like we did something worthwhile in addition to having something to keep busy and keep safe and keep sane and work with creative people. So that's no small thing. Anyway, we're continuing to do it because we really like it. If you go over to houseseats.live, we've slowed it way down. We're only doing a few shows a month, but we have a bunch coming up. So check it out. There's cool stuff coming, including live versions of some of my favorite podcasts, including the Best Pick Pod, which is an Academy Awards podcast, Celebrity Book Club with Chelsea Devantes, who is just a terrific person and very funny. We have an amazing guest for that. We're doing some more Thrilling Adventure Hour stuff. Check it out. I would love to keep doing these live shows in this format, and also, in person would be fun to do also. HouseSeats.live was sort of the thing that kept me going last year in many ways, in addition to cooking and baking a lot, because there was no work. I know that there were virtual rooms. I know they were out there. I know there was some staffing, but it was tough. It was tough out there. I don't think I got paid for any writing work last year, and that's frustrating. And when Ben Acker and I realized that was going to be the case, we had a couple things die early on because of the pandemic. And then, I don't know, we've talked about this on the podcast too, like it was hard to get any traction. It was hard to get any momentum going because people's minds were not on work as well they shouldn't be. Anyway, when we saw that this is probably going to be the case, we did the thing that we were able to do, which is to write. And we were lucky that we got to do it. But I do think, as writers, it's the thing we always have, right? You can write. You can take out a pad of paper. You can sit down at your computer. You can write something. So we wrote 2 new feature scripts that we're really happy with. They're both horror movies. I'm making a concerted effort to write more horror. Horror is what I've always loved, and I feel like I wasn't allowed to do it for a long time, and you can tell personal stories through that genre in a way that you sometimes can't through other genres. So we wrote these 2 new horror features. We're really excited about them. We're hoping, someone will want to make them. We wrote 2 new pilots also because we wanted to. One of them was something that I had been thinking about all year, and I know that other people were as well. It captured a lot of sort of the both comfort and what if situation that we're in. And it took a lot of churning over, but luckily what we had last year was time. I guess that's the one thing we had in addition to a pandemic. So we wrote this new pilot that I'm really excited about and I really care about, and that's very personal, and I hope that someone will want to take a look at it. So that's where we are. I've talked to a lot of writers and a lot of executives, and it seems like we're still in a kind of a desert, and it's going to be a weird time in Hollywood for a while, and stuff is getting made. Production, is slowly starting up again. Rooms are starting up again, still virtually for the time being, which is good. It's going to be a while till things are normal. And it's still hard out there. It's still really hard. But again, we can write. So do that. I'm doing it, and I hope you will too. Put new stuff out into the world. Please enjoy the show.
They write, they talk, and talk about what they write. Tune in tonight, or whenever the time is right. It's the Writers Panel with Ben Blacker, and it's starting now. Oh, yeah!
Before we get started today, let's have a brief chat with our old friend Lila Cohan, who has a really cool new endeavor going on that she's going to tell us about.
You know, I think when you are established and you have been writing for a while, it's easy to sort of fall into some like laziness or just like thoughtlessness. And so it's been nice actually working on being like, oh right, like it would be, I should treat the pilots I'm writing now like they're my first ones. Rather than being like, all right, like
instead of phoning it in like you want to do.
Instead of let's just not be a hat today, just for one.
I'm keeping that all in. We're talking to Lila Cohan. She's back. Lila is doing this really cool, I guess, newsletter, you'd call it, called Room Snacks, which folks can subscribe to. Why don't you give the little, just a brief description, and then we can talk about it a little bit.
Terrific. So Room Snacks is a newsletter about the art, craft, and snacks of TV writing, coming from a certified TV writer, me. I've written for Bridgerton, Special, First Wives Club, Santa Clarita Diet, telenovela, Awkward, bunch of stuff. And each week it's geared a little more towards the sort of early career writer, but as we were saying, I think that there's helpful stuff in there for anyone. But the first few issues, I've really been talking in very granular detail about how to come up with ideas, what to do when you have an idea that someone else has, what kind of idea is best for you. And then sort of the next series I think I'm going to do is about just the sort of really breaking down how to break a pilot.
That's great.
That's something that felt very mysterious to me. And honestly, sometimes still does when I've been in a room for a while and then I have to go out and break a new story by myself. But there's advice. There's a weekly open thread where people can chat, which has been really cool to see people sort of forming a little bit of a community there.
Nice.
And there is no free content. People keep subscribing for the free option. There is none. It's $50 a year and you get 2 newsletters every week, the newsletter and the open thread. And I think that's a pretty good deal, honestly.
It really is, especially for the kind of advice you're giving, the kind of insights you're offering. And it's the kind of questions that I see asked of, me, of you, of like Javi and Jose, and like all these guys who are sort of publicly giving advice when they can. Here it is in a nice, like codified way, all in one place with really an arc to it. Like you're a storyteller. And I think the advice comes out that way too, which is great.
Yeah, it's been really fun. Just all this stuff that I sort of have in my head constantly and would tell people when they're like, oh, can I take you out for a coffee? Yeah. It's sort of that pouring onto the page of your email.
That's great.
It's been a blast to write and I've gotten really nice feedback so far. So I'm really super excited about it.
Understandably so. And I think the way you're tackling it, which is to divide it into these chunks, which really are like frequently asked questions. I thought the recent one about like what to do when someone has your idea or when you see your idea pop up like on Deadline or something was great. Do you want to just talk I think that's a great example of the sort of short form advice that you're giving.
Totally. So I talked a little bit about just like, a story from my own history, which is the strip that I got staffed off of. That was sort of like my starting out thing is the strip Katie and Becca Grow Up. And, it was 2012. It feels like a very 2012 script. But it was these 2 friends, they're like 28, but they're stuck in this sort of perma-adolescence. They run into their best friend from college who now like went to grad school, bought a house, got engaged. And they're like, fuck, her life is so much better than ours. We got to grow up. But meanwhile, she feels like she never experienced her 20s. So she's leading them. But as you can see, they're all helping each other. And that script got me an agent. It got me staffed. And when it got me my agent at the time, he was like, we're going to sell this script once you finish in this room. And so I was all excited. And then I was on Deadline one day and I see there had been a very popular Tumblr at the time that I think was then turned into a book called Adulting. That was
sure.
about grown up in 500 life lessons or something like that. And it had been sold to Fox as a put pilot, which sounded very fancy. I have since learned it's not. And like J.J. Abrams was producing it, Abby Cohn and Mark Silverstein were writing it. They're big deals. And I was like, oh my God. And like called my agent and was like, it's urgent. He calls me back and I'm like, is Katie and Becca dead? And he was like, what? No. Because here's the thing. Like, most shows, number one, are not made. So Katie and Becca did sell to what was at the time still ABC Family. This show sold to Fox. Neither of them were shot. So, you know, we all got paid. Probably Abby Cohn and Mark Silverstein a lot more than me. I was a baby. But, you know, neither of them got made. Most shows will not get made. So there's plenty of sort of parallel development. And then even sometimes when things do get made, no one really cares. Like I talked about this in the newsletter, you know, Studio 60 and 30 Rock went on the same network, the same season. You know, they're Friends with Benefits and No Strings Attached came out within 6 months of each other. There are 9 Reddit GameStop movies in development right now. So it's like something that I think when you are an early career writer, you get super paranoid about, and you're like, oh my God, there's not going to be room for my idea. There is. And also like, it doesn't matter. Like, I think I also say in this, you know, don't be the person who is like, I'm not going to share my idea because someone might steal it. Like, no one's going to steal your idea. And even if they do, it's not, with very rare exceptions, concept isn't much. It's really execution. So your take, if you and I wrote the same exact pilot idea, we would have 2 very different pilots.
Yeah.
So it's that's the sort of thing that I chat on about.
And it's like there's so much packed into even just that example where like you get these nuances of advice, which is like a thing that working writers know. This thing about people who are afraid their ideas are going to be stolen sort of marks you as a young writer or a new writer. Right. But to see that in print makes a big difference. And like, it puts us all on equal footing in a lot of ways, at least as far as the knowledge that's out there.
Totally. And I think there's so much that I didn't know when I was starting out that I wish I knew. There's so much that I'm still learning now. And, you know, I want to dig into like both the big topics and this sort of like basic overarching stuff like I'm doing right now. But I also want to know in the future, like very micro, like there will be an issue at some point dedicated to where the nearest bathroom is to every parking lot. You know? Because that's something that has tripped me up.
Oh my God, totally. That's great.
Just like helpful parking hints, honestly, might be like a recurring series. I've lost my car in the Galaxy lot at Fox like 8 times. And
absolutely.
I can help one person not make that.
That is brilliant. Yeah, it is those little specific things that like you're not going to find in a how-to book. You're not going to put in a how-to book, but that can live in this newsletter that is genuinely helpful.
Thank you. And the other thing too is that like and in a future trip I talk about books that have really helped me. Like I loved like the TV Writer's Workbook by Ellen Sandler, but those books are pretty out of date. Like there's not, unless I don't know about one, I don't think there's a TV writing book that feels really up to date. Like they're all still like, oh, you'll break in with a freelance episode. And it's like, what is that? Like, so this is sort of just trying to be like more current and more up to the minute with, because it's, you know, it's all changing every day.
So fast.
My first job was in 2012 when network staffing season still felt like the be all and end all of getting staffed. And now it's the other day I was like, oh, is it staffing season?
It doesn't feel like it anymore.
Does not matter. So it's kind of just like about advice for this moment in time, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And just to that for a second, I was thinking about this recently. When I started this podcast, I remember, I think in maybe the first year of the show, there was a lot of talk about like Netflix is going to start doing new scripted television. And like, what does that mean for the industry? And like seeing that conversation take place in real time. And I would urge people to go back to like those early episodes to sort of see how it took place, and how the industry was responding. We're getting that now from you with Room Snacks. Again, a real-time look at how the industry is evolving, because it is fast and it is constant. I wanted to ask you, why Room Snacks?
I gotta give credit. Allison Bennett, who is an incredible writer, came up with the title. And to me, it just sort of epitomized what I wanted. Because these are sort of snack-sized pieces of information. And I think, as we're talking, it's April 2021. So we're not really in rooms having snacks right now. I think that's one of the most important things in a writer's room in its way. Like, the big fucking box of peanut butter pretzels from Trader Joe's and Pop Chip and like weird gum and LaCroix. Like, so it sort of is a little bit about the community of writers, and also, just a little snack. Someday I will also do a ranking of room snacks.
I would hope so.
I mean, listen, there's some classics. There's some that I think people are wrong about. I have some hates.
Can't wait. I want to see like a thermometer on the side of the website where it's like, this week I'm trying to boost Twizzlers.
Oh my God.
All right. Tell folks where they can subscribe.
So you can go to roomsnacks.substack.com and subscribe there. Again, there will offer you a free option. You will not get anything except a weekly reminder from me that there is no free option. There's no such thing as a free room snack. And also you can go, it's linked to on my Twitter at Lila Cohan. And I think probably on my Instagram at Lila Cohan too.
And I would like, if folks enjoy this podcast, they will enjoy this newsletter. It's a similar kind of conversational, valuable advice that you get from this.
And I have to give a shout out to the podcast because I have been listening to it since I was a early career writer and learning things and learning like I love it so much because there's nowhere else I think that does the kind of like very granular, very like the stuff that writers really care about, which is like, how do you format your scripts? Like, what are you doing here? And it makes me really happy. I listen to in the car all the time.
Oh, that's very kind. I appreciate it. Well, good luck to you. Folks should check out Room Snacks, and good luck with all the stuff you have going on, which we won't talk about now, but we'll talk about hopefully in a future show.
A dream. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Lila. All right. This is how a podcast starts, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. This is going to be a great conversation. You are three talented writers and also performers, which is something I want to talk about. But I'm going to start by asking you to introduce yourselves on the microphone so the listener knows what your voice sounds like. And Kingsley, let's start with you. Tell us who you are and where the listener may have seen your name on their television screen.
It's a very common mistake, but it's Bentley, not Kingsley. But
oh my God!
No, it happens.
I'm so sorry.
I get called everything. I'm Bentley Kyle Evans. I get called Barry. I've been called Kingsley before. I've been called Barrett, Brett, a number of names. But I'm Bentley Kyle Evans, and you may have seen my name scroll across the screen on the Martin series, Martin. And also the Jamie Foxx show that I created, and a number of others. Love That Girl, Family Time, In the Cut, a number of different shows that have graced the television screen over the last 25 years.
Thank you. And Mike.
Actually, my name's Kingsley. A lot of people get that wrong. Sorry that we're so. No, I am the head writer and co-EP of Full Frontal with Samantha Bee. I've written for The Tonight Show. I've written for Adam Ruins Everything, Bill Nye. I also was a video game writer for a while. And so I've written, if you're a video game fan, things like Nintendo's Kid Icarus Uprising. I was one of the English language writers.
And do you want to plug your new
right.
book?
I also have a book that I forget to plug on every podcast I go on. Speaking of video games, I wrote a full book about the game Silent Hill 2 for Boss Fight Books, which is an independent publisher that does books about games.
Incredible.
Nice.
That's great. And Chris.
I'm Chris Brandon. You would know my name from some obscure English theatre, and also a new show called Bloodlands, which has been on Acorn TV for the last month, and I'm the writer on that.
Great. And I did mention that you are all performers as well, and so I think that's a pretty good place to start, because unless I'm wrong, and I've already gotten your names wrong. I think did you all get your start as performers? Bentley, did you start out as a performer?
Yeah, I did. I started out as an actor. One of those things where I never felt comfortable acting. So I found refuge by hiding behind the scenes, which I felt very comfortable doing. But I did. I started out as an actor with Robert Townsend when he did the Hollywood Shuffle movie. And I think it was the biggest inductee ever to get into the Screen Actors Guild, and we were Taft-Hartley lead. And so, yeah, I started out as an actor and found my way behind the scenes.
But it's funny. I mean, you say you were never really comfortable there. Why get in the first place? And then how did you start to make that transition?
It seemed like a cool thing to do. So you're living in LA, right? And so here's the thing. Growing up in LA, nobody thinks about being an actor. It just doesn't happen. People come here to become actors. And, you have kids that go to your school that are leaving early, going to auditions and stuff like that. And you're like, man, he's lucky. He gets to go to auditions and do shows. And then, it becomes a thing where you go, it might be kind of cool to be on TV, for the chick factor. And also, it just seems like a cool thing to do. So I let one of my friends talk me into going to an audition. And that's pretty much how I got started with it. So it was just a thing that it was like, let's do it to get popular, but I really wasn't committed to it.
Yeah. And then, so was writing also a part of your life, or what was the progression to getting into writing?
Yeah. The very first time I ever read a script, I read the movie, I'm Gonna Get You Sucker. I read it from cover to cover. And I fell in love. I was like, this is so funny and so stupid. And if I could make a living doing this, I would love to do that. So I knew that I was hooked by reading that script. And then I actually got my, I actually got my start on Martin. I became the showrunner later, but I started as a staff writer. And what happened was I had been writing a bunch of spec scripts, I was the type of kid that would sit and watch TV and try to write alternate endings to the series, to the shows. And I'm like, I can do better than that. I can write a better episode than that. And so I'm writing Cosby Show episodes and all these different shows that were on the air at the time. And I had a bunch of spec scripts. And then I started kind of like creating my own series in my head that didn't exist. And when I got my shot, when Martin Lawrence was getting, when he got the opportunity to do the Martin show, he asked me, we were friends, and that's a long story. We won't go there right this second. But he asked me what I wanted to do to help him out in this project. And I said, I want to be a writer. And I gave him a stack of scripts to read, and I got the job. And there's a lot of small details in there, but I ended up as a staff.
That's fantastic. Well, we'll pick up on some of those details in a minute. But Mike, let's talk about your trajectory. Did you start out as a stand-up?
I started out as a stand-up. I always liked writing, but writing always seemed like something that other people do. Like, when I was a teenager in college, I would take creative writing classes and I'd write short stories. And looking back, there was a lot of sort of prototypical comedy in there. Like in my creative writing classes in college, I was often the only one who wrote jokes in my stories. Everyone else's stories when you're 20 are the most serious things on the planet. And I would try to write funny stories. But I never thought I'd be a writer. I always thought that was like a fun thing to do that special people do. And in college, I kind of, I had friends who were like, you should try stand up. And I figured, I don't know, I'd always liked stand up. So I went to an open mic and I liked it and I kept doing it. And from there, I tried acting, and sort of like Bentley, I realized I don't like acting. Like once stand up started to take off, they were like, start auditioning for stuff, and I'd audition. And I'd be like, oh, I hate this. That's right. I don't know how to move my body. But I know how to move myself on stage as me, and I know how to write. And so I realized I was not going to be a writer. And I also found out from going on the road that I found the road a bit depressing. Like I'd like the hour of doing stand-up, and then the 23 hours after that, I'd want to kill myself. So I, slowly got into writing, and I was able to freelance for The Onion, and I started freelancing for different websites. And eventually I started freelancing for Weekend Update and got a bunch of jokes on there. And from there, I sort of snowballed into The Tonight Show. And from there, I had a career.
That's so interesting. What was the entry into writing? Like, how did you have to sell yourself differently as a writer, or did you know these folks from being a stand-up?
I would meet a lot of these folks from being a stand-up. I was lucky enough that I went to college in New York, so I got to start stand-up in New York. If you get to start stand-up in New York or LA, you're already a step above everyone else who starts comedy in like other cities. So I was lucky that like I was doing open mics with, staff writers for The Onion who were themselves trying to start doing stand-up. And, I would, do book shows at bars with TV writers. And I didn't know how lucky I was at that time, but I got to meet a lot of people. And you do well in front of someone who's a writer on a thing. Sometimes they're going to ask you if you want to submit. Now, I will say that, for everything I had to submit for, like The Onion, even though a writer there was like, you should submit, I still had to go through their process of, there was a good chance that they could have rejected me still. I still had to go through their basic, like, freelance application process.
I want to pick up on some of that stuff in a second, Mike, and talk about like those submission packets and stuff, because I think it's very similar to like the specs that Bentley was writing or that I was writing too. But Chris, let's talk for a second about acting and writing. You are still an actor, is that correct?
Allegedly, yeah. It's been a while. It's one of those, never say never, but I haven't done it in a while, like 5-6 years. I think once the writing took over, I was kind of like, I'm in my happy place. This is where I want to be. And I don't even know if I still have an acting agent. That's bad.
Well, it's nice to be in the situation that you don't have to find out.
Yes, exactly. And maybe it's that very English thing as well. If you don't quite want the awkwardness of phoning up and going, "Am I still? Do you still? Are we still?"
Right. So let's talk about that. You had a pretty lengthy career as an actor before getting into writing. It seems like, or writing professionally anyway.
Yeah, I think I came through a very sort of traditional British system, which was sort of classical, leaving college and then classical training. I did a 2-year sort of postgrad classical training, and then sort of jobbing after that in theatre and different things like that. But I think like Bentley, I always had dreams of like goldfish platform shoes from I'm Gonna Get You Sucker. So I was kind of always angling for that. Whether as a performer or as a writer, but I think I just realized that in writing, I was in that headspace where I felt like creatively I could go down more rabbit holes than I was able to as an actor. I'm in awe of actors who can change on a sixpence, and I think I was like, oh my God, I'm still shouting. So I think it's a better place for me to be quiet and thinking of ideas and always trying to get comedy, but I've ended up in a kind of dark thriller sphere, which is interesting as well.
Well, that's something we can talk about in a bit, is, you kind of don't get to choose where your career takes you very often.
Yeah, sure. But you end up in those places.
While you were making a living as an actor, though, like, how did you make it known that writing was what you wanted to do? How did you start to make that transition?
I did, which I suppose is sort of the American influence, which has sort of crept in over here, of writing spec scripts. So I started writing just different spec scripts and sending them to people. And I just kept writing. I would keep writing until, and basically just keep sending them out, probably harassing people, but just sending scripts upon scripts until there came a point probably in doing that I got better anyway as a writer, and then an agent started to take notice, and then through that that snowballed into it. So I think, I mean, I'd always wanted to write, and I'd started writing at drama school, and so it was that really. It was just an unending process of sitting sort of cold and broke in my downtime in my flat, and I'm thinking, do you know what? I'm just going to write something that I want to see.
Yeah, and I think that's how so many of us start, right?
Yeah.
Is, you know, what's the show, what's the movie, what's the sketch even that I think would be great that doesn't exist out there, right?
Yeah.
Were you writing original pilots? Were you writing specs of existing shows?
Always original, but I would say, but how original is debatable. I mean, I think in the back of your head, I mean, to start off with, you're like, I really like this show, so I'm going to write my version of this show, and not rip off the characters, but sort of try and do it differently. But maybe in that kind of there's flattery in that, I think, and you learn in that. You learn from reading other scripts, and as you were saying, you know, you read these other scripts and you're like, Jesus, I could try and write like that. That would be great. Mm-hmm. So, and you know, even down to stylistic, like I went through a phase of reading Christopher Nolan scripts and be like, stylistically, I have to copy how he's doing this, and so that's where I would end up. And you know, and I think that's a really useful exercise. When I was about 15, I sat down and pressed and paused on The Usual Suspects VHS and wrote the whole thing down. Wow. And you kind of like, it's stuff like that. You're just like, I realize I might be slightly obsessed with this.
And we do always, I mean, I say that this comes up every once in a while, and I always like to recommend to new writers, like, reverse engineering a show, which it sounds like is exactly what you did with The Usual Suspects. And I think a lot of us did with TV shows that we loved, whether it was consciously or not, sort of taking them apart as you watch them, and even, you know, going so far as to write down, do an outline, or even a script just to see what makes it tick. Bentley, I want to talk about that for you. Like, when you were writing these early specs, how did you start to learn the language of TV? You were already in it as an actor, you know, to an extent, but those scripts are very different from sitting down. You know, reading a script is very different from sitting down and writing a script.
Yeah, you know, it's wild, man. You know, it's like, you know, just the ignorance of the unknown. When I started writing, I started reading all the scripts that I auditioned for, the ones that the roles that I got and the roles that I didn't get. If I had the script, I would just study the script. I always tell writers all the time, you know, you have to emulate what you see. And I literally just started like writing down my ideas, not in a particular format. I used to write on notebook paper. The honest to God truth, I was never good at typing, but I knew that I had the ideas and I would write it just like I saw it in the script on the notebook paper. And then there was a software called Scriptware, and Scriptware actually put the script in a format. I think it was like the first incarnation of software that did that before Final Draft, and I got that, so it taught me how to, you know, pretty much line everything up, and it had the different templates for TV. It was cheating. And and so I just started writing down the ideas. I didn't know what an act break was. I didn't know the nuances of what a script should be. I just wrote it, and I didn't worry myself with that kind of, you know, with those details, because I still don't think that that's important when you're first starting. I think that once you start, you know, learning how to take the ideas out of your head and put them on paper to where they're at least, where someone's at least able to understand what you're trying to say, then you start worrying about the structure more. And that's just my, but that's what I used to do. I used to just read a lot of scripts and emulate what I saw, and, just try to take all these different nuances. I wrote a film one time, and the film is called A Thin Line Between Love and Hate, and it was produced and out and everything. But I stole beat by beat from Fatal Attraction. I watched Fatal Attraction. I said, I need that scene. I need a scene like that. I need this. I stole it. I'm here to admit. But it laid the structure out perfect for me. So
yeah,
it works.
And it becomes something else, right? Because it's filtered through you, and it's about the story you're telling. So, like, yes, we can like structure is structure, but
Right.
you know, it's the details that make it something else.
Right.
I'm curious to hear about like what was Martin the first like regular writing gig that you got? Were you were a staff writer on that?
I was a staff writer on there. I had written sketches for Keenan Ivory Wayans when he was doing In Living Color. I wanted to be a sketch writer.
Oh wow.
You know, and at that time I was still trying to do sketch stuff. And he bought a couple of my sketches, but they were never produced. And so, so Martin was my first staff writing gig. And I promise you, when I got in the writer's room, that's when I knew this is where I'm supposed to be for the rest of my life. I'm 6'5". I was never an athlete. I was never a scholar. I didn't know where my space was. What am I supposed to do? Everybody else is so good at all these other things. And when I got in that writer's room and I saw a bunch of misfits like me, and we're throwing stuff out at each other and we're laughing and we're, eating the best lunches and we're just cracking up in this room that's set up for us to just be what we are. That's when I knew this is what I have to do for the rest of my life. And I started doing again. I started emulating. I would see other writers say things and I would go, maybe I should throw out something now. And then it becomes a rhythm. You start watching the showrunner and you're looking for his acceptance and his validation. And then once you start to get it, you go, I'm pretty good at this. And being able to, with Martin, I was able to take stories out of my real life and just lay them out there. So I became the guy that kind of guided the stories, because when you watch the show, most of them came from my real life, and it's the truth. And Martin and I were the same age. We were going through the same type of things at that time, and that character kind of followed like the guidelines of what my life was at that time. So yeah.
Who was the showrunner at that time, and what kind of room did he run?
The showrunner was John Bowman. John Bowman had come from SNL. He was a Lampoon guy. He had done In Living Color as well. He was I don't know if he was the showrunner on In Living Color, but I know he was a writer there. And so what John's method in the room was he didn't rule with an iron fist. He kind of let everybody do and say what they wanted to say. It was a real creative, mesh of things. It wasn't like, where he had staff writers, you go in the other room and write cold opens. You guys, because I've seen that kind of thing before, but he actually allowed us all to have a voice. He valued everyone in the room, whether they were staff writer, co-exec, supervisor, whatever level they were at. And so it was just a very big collaborative effort. And John, I always say that he was like the Phil Jackson of the writer's room, because he probably wasn't the funniest guy in the room, but he knew funny when he heard it, and he would just coach it. He would point his finger. That's it. That, and the writers is typing and all this kind of stuff. And so it was just a really fun atmosphere. The show, the writer's room was actually, to me, it was the show. We were way funnier than the cast. And the things that we said about the cast, I hope that there's no recordings around anymore of that kind of stuff. Because we would just have a good time just throwing darts at the cast members and stuff like that. But it was just a real fun experience, very, very fun experience.
That's great. I mean, what an entry into the business. Mike, I want to hear about the early experiences you had as well. But I want to start by talking about those packets that you mentioned, because those are like, this is the way you get into late night and sketch writing, and they can be tough. They can also be a lot of fun, but it's sort of trying to hit a target, especially if the show doesn't exist yet, that you are unsure of. Tell me a little bit about the packet submission process for you.
For anyone who doesn't know, packets for late night shows are like a little portfolio of writing you have to do, almost like a little exam that you have a deadline on. And I don't know. Packets, there's the good thing about them is that you can practice. With a late night show, just like you can, watch a sitcom and sort of take the beats you want from it, you can watch a late night show and go, okay, this is how Jimmy Fallon talks. This is how Stephen Colbert talks. This is how Trevor Noah talks. And coming from stand-up, I was able to, in my head, kind of do an impression of them. like when I got to Fallon, I would get called out by the other writers because I would literally, oh, sorry, I hit my microphone. I would be literally gesturing while I was writing because I was trying to like stand up out the ideas. So I would be writing monologue and like trying to act it out in my head to get the rhythms right. And, with packets, it's just practice. It's like practice with any type of writing. The thing that most people get wrong about it is that they assume that every late night host has the same voice. And so people, I've even read packets where people accidentally leave in the name Steven when they're applying for a different show than Stephen Colbert show, and each late night show has a different voice, just like every sitcom has a different voice. Like if you're trying to get on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you can't write the same script you'd write for like Rick and Morty, like they're different shows. And so I just learned to do that. I learned how to imitate. I learned how to, pick up voices. I would do the same thing where I would take a joke. I would take it apart. I would see how they do a setup, how they do an act out. How they use graphics over their shoulders. So you do the same thing that the other guys did. You're taking apart a script. You're trying to figure out how it works. And for me, my writing method with jokes, because that's how I broke in. I broke in with pitching Onion headlines. Pitching SNL jokes. When I was hired at Fallon initially, I was a monologue writer. And I was still a monologue writer when I left, but I started to get into more sketch work. And for me, I would just shotgun jokes. I would write, I would read the news and shotgun, like literally just write joke, trying not to think about quality, just writing the jokes. And I would review that page and go, oh, I like this idea. Can I iterate it to be funnier? And then I'd go through that almost like, when you see like screen printing and it does different colors and it's like red, blue, green, that's how I would try to revise my jokes. And I would cut ones I didn't like, use ones I did. And that really helped me. Shotgunning jokes really helped me because it helped me realize that I can't be so precious that I spend 15 minutes on one joke that doesn't work when my brain will eventually produce something that's usable.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it's similar to what Chris was talking about with like just doing those script after script after script, right? Like you learn to write in this format. You learn to, you hone your craft. That's really what it is. And it feels like that's what we do for those first 10 years.
Yeah.
If we're lucky. Was Fallon the first staff that you joined?
It was the first staff job, first full-time staff job. Because I got a bunch of jokes on Weekend Update, Seth Meyers was nice enough to take me to the ESPN Awards twice as a staff writer. I don't know sports that well, so I had to cram for a month beforehand. Like it was a fucking exam. But I wanted that credit and I wanted that money. So so I was lucky enough to do a couple of award shows here and there beforehand. And I was doing a lot of stand-up, like I got Montreal New Faces as a stand-up. So I sort of had a career going before I was a staff writer at Fallon, but I think staff writer at Fallon is when I was like, oh, I am a comedy writer.
Mm-hmm. And you sort of get in the system and you meet other writers and other producers and stuff. Was there, even though you joined as a monologue writer there, did it feel different to writing jokes on your own?
Actually, no. I weirdly, it like my process made me able to do this instantly. Like people got mad at me because my third day I got 4 out of the 8 jokes in the monologue. Whereas like most people, it takes a couple weeks to start getting things on. I hit the ground and just got things on because I knew how to look at, and backing up for a lot of shows, and this doesn't apply to every show, but for Weekend Update and Fallon and a few other shows, traditional late night shows with traditional monologues, they'll send you setups. So they'll send you like, and setups are, you can change them, but it's like, today this happened. They found the world's fattest dog in a mailbox, this, that. And I would just take those and shotgun again. And I was able to hit the ground running. It was weird for me because it felt like, oh, this is what I do.
That makes a lot of sense. That's really interesting. Chris, let's talk about that. A similar thing. Looking at the shows that you've written on, and I'm looking at Red Rock and Bloodlands, were these room shows or were they more like the traditional British dramas, which tend to have 1 or 2 writers?
More like the traditional version, and it's fascinating to listen to the room shows because I think if I do miss any aspects of acting, it's that idea of the rehearsal studio, of everybody in together and throwing these ideas back and forward, and the laughter as well. Yeah. And it's so writing here is perhaps more of a lonely profession, but it's but on Red Rock, which was more of a police procedural, there were many writers, so you would have a meeting at the beginning of the season, but it was for a day or an afternoon or something, and then they would run through the ideas and sort of tone and stuff like that. But Bloodlands, at least I have two great executive producers in Jed Mercurio and Mark Redhead, and together we sort of throw that story back and forth. But at the end of the day, yeah, the writing is just me, and it's so it's more of a solo thing. But I'd love to get that. I mean, being in a room sounds fantastic.
It really is. You should do it.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Well, let me talk about something. I feel like I'm often asked on Twitter by new writers is like, how do you trust your ideas? And my answer is usually like, well, I've been doing this long enough, so I know what works for the story I want to tell, and maybe I'm wrong, but it's the one I'm choosing, right? At a certain point, you just have to make a choice. So I'm curious to hear, like on Bloodlands, how do you find your footing in telling this story? When you don't have 8 other people to bounce ideas off of.
I mean, it's interesting. I think, like any of us, first and foremost, you're a fan. So you come to it as a fan. And if you write something and at the end of it, you think, no, I'm not sure I really enjoy that, then get rid of it. And so, yeah, I mean, it's sort of about entertaining yourself at the end of the day, isn't it? And you've just got to get to that point. And then I suppose the big breath moment is when you then hand it over to the execs and the development people, and they read it and come back to you and go, it's okay. And then that's when the discussion starts. But it's great to just write things to really grip yourself and entertain yourself. I think it makes your head a big empty space that you can play around in, which is good fun.
That makes sense. What are the challenges?
I suppose the challenges are not having that immediate sort of springboard of somebody else to talk to and go, I'm thinking of this, and for them to immediately go, maybe it would be better if you did that. And if you want to talk something through, I think it's about depriving your friends of their precious time or something like that. Whereas it's not a room full of people who are all there with the same objective. It's somebody else going, I'm kind of trying to do something else. Do you mind stopping? So but I think that's sort of one of the main challenges, really.
That makes a lot of sense. Let's come back to that in a sec, because I want to make sure we talk about the Jamie Foxx show, Bentley. Tell me about getting that show off the ground, and like, how do you know what the right vehicle is for Jamie Foxx at that time?
Yeah. So, at that time, I mean, this is well before the Oscar, and I think, we had become familiar with Jamie from In Living Color, playing the iconic Wanda character, which was just so absurd. And I think, when I got to Warner Brothers, I had a development deal at Warner Brothers. And Jamie, when you get there, they give you this roster of all the talent that they have deals with in case you're thinking about bringing someone else in. They're like, no, we have a list. And so I look on this list, I see Jamie Foxx's name on there, and I'm just I'm still doing the Martin show at the time. And I felt like there's certain similarities that I could really work with. And so I asked them to set me up with a meeting with Jamie, and they had assigned him to another showrunner. And I said, you got to get me in a room with him. Let me just get in a room with him. So once I sat down with him, I convinced him that I was the guy that he needed to be with. I didn't have an idea what the show was, but he needed to be with me. And after a little bit of convincing, he says, you know what? I like where you're coming from. I will, let's do that. So I pitched him a bunch of ideas. He hated every last one of them. Everyone.
Let me stop you there. I want to hear about that. Like, what kind of stuff were you pitching? Because like, it could be anything, right? Like, you just know, like, here's the guy to build the show around.
Yeah, I mean, so it's obvious that Jamie Foxx is a musician. He's classically trained musician, and so my thought was, it's got to be around the record industry. And this is when P. Diddy was at his, he was at the apex, and I was like, maybe we'll make him a record exec. Yeah, that's brilliant. We'll do this thing around a record company, and then I pitched that to him. No, okay, maybe he's a songwriter. Everything was about music. And I just thought he's an A&R man. He wasn't interested in any of that stuff. So he said, you know what I want to do? I want to do a show about a hotel. And I said, what about a hotel? He goes, my character comes to live with his aunt and uncle at a hotel. And I said, and he goes, that's for you to figure out. And I was like, wow, what the hell? A hotel? I know nothing about the hotel industry, the business, anything. So then I had to do my research. I had to create these characters that would accompany him and really put together, an ensemble that really worked well together. And I took characters out that were right in my own life and, modeled the characters after them. And then I pitched it back to him. He loved it. And so now we go into Warner Brothers Studios and we go to the president of Warner Brothers at the time, and we pitch him this idea. And you've never seen a storyteller like Jamie Foxx. This guy will go in a room. He'll sell the show for you. As a showrunner, he's a dream because you're going, yeah, just do your thing. I'm just going to set it up and let you go. And he's doing sound effects. He's helicopters. He's doing everything in this pitch. And he's captivating. And so we pitch this thing and Warner Brothers says, we like it. Let's take this thing out. So we now we have this pitch formulated. We take it to ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, the WB, which was a new incarnation. And we took it one other place too. But whatever it was, ABC came back right away and says, we want to do a pilot. Well, the WB says, we'll do 6 episodes guaranteed on air. So now we have a bit of a fight because Jamie and his manager at the time, they wanted to go with ABC because of prestige. Mm-hmm. I wanted to go with WB because I was going, hey guys, we get on over there. We're going to be on for a while. Let's do that. And so after a little bit of a fight, we ended up on the WB. And I think it kind of formed a wedge between me and Jamie's manager because he felt like I had too much control over Jamie's ear. So we ended up going with the WB and we did 100 episodes.
Unbelievable.
Fantastic.
And now I'm back working with Jamie again on a new show. So it's
That's
great.
Right. Yeah. So clearly that partnership works. I mean, like when you're working with someone like that, someone like Martin, with whom you clearly clicked, like, tell me about that relationship. Like, tell me about, the give and take between the writer and performer.
So for me, anybody that I'm going to spend a lot of time working with and for, I have to get to know the person intimately. So it's like with Martin, I had an unfair advantage because we were already very, very close friends. And I knew his parents, I knew his sisters and brothers. I had been to his hometown. I knew everything about him. And I would sit there and just watch his day-to-day activity. And I would take his cadence and his sayings and everything and kind of like, I know, no, he won't say couch, he'll say sofa. No, he won't say this, he'll do that. And I would just kind of really get to know it. They became a case study. And with Jamie Foxx, now that's something totally different because Jamie Foxx is true genius. It's like, I've never really met a true genius until I met Jamie. His mind works a completely different way. He's got ADD, but then he's got this other thing, this genius thing. I was working with him recently and I was pitching him an idea and he just gets up in the middle of me pitching and walks away. He's still looking at me, but he walks away and he goes over to his piano and he just starts playing while I'm pitching and I'm going, what's going on? And then he stops after about 10 minutes. He goes, sorry, I had to get that out. It was just in my head. And but it sounded beautiful. And I was going, what's going on with this guy? Where is he right now? But then when you get him in front of that camera, he goes bananas. He goes berserk. But I got to know him and what he was about, what his family was like. And he's a very complex guy and comes from a really humble beginning. So I had to go to his hometown, meet his grandmother before she passed and ask a lot of questions because I really want to know who it is that I'm working with.
It makes a lot of sense. And clearly like that process pays off, right? You can dig deep, you can create the characters together.
And then another advantage you have with both of those guys, Martin and Jamie, they were both stand-up comedians. So you got a chance to see their act and you can learn a lot about a person from their comedy act as well.
Absolutely. And Mike, I mean, you're nodding through this.
Yeah.
You have to have a similar relationship, right? Whether it's with Sam B, whether it was with Bill Nye, whomever, but to like be able to write in the voice of these very specific performers.
Yeah, you have to get to know them. You have to get to know what they like. I mean, a huge thing of, late night writing is you are kind of writing stand-up in a certain way, or a sketch. You're writing for a different type of viewer and audience. And you kind of need to learn the rhythms. You also need to learn what they won't say. Like that's another thing I'll notice in packets is, people are clearly watching this and look, we're all funny in our own ways, but you need to figure out how to be funny in their way while still being funny in your own way, which is a hard Venn diagram to create. But at the same time, if like you're making Jimmy Fallon say fuck in your packet, people are going to be like, well, he wouldn't do that. So a lot of it, it's not just figuring out what they would say or their personality. It's also being like, what do they hate talking about? What do they always avoid? Or what do they love talking about? And it seems like they want to talk about more. Like one thing that weirdly, a lot of late night shows suffer from is, a lot of networks want to promote sports for synergy, and a lot of late night writers don't know sports that well. And so, think about things that you might know if you're applying for a job like that too. Like, shows like Jimmy Fallon love people who know showbiz and can write about showbiz gossip. You don't have to be a political genius to write for a late night show, but you do have to know what the host wants if you're going to work there.
That makes sense. And looking at Sam B, I mean, that is a different format from the shows you had worked on before. Yep. It tackles stories a little more in depth. Tell me a little bit about that adjustment, if there was one.
Well, luckily I'd worked on, working on the Bill Nye Show and working on Adam Ruins Everything. I'd worked on shows that had a research team where you had to meet with people who are going to fact check you and fact check your jokes, which is not honestly as bad as it sounds, because having like 3 to 5 researchers in a room means you have 3 to 5 non-comedy people in a room that you're trying jokes on. And so it is nice in a writer's room to have people that have no stake in getting their material on the show, because you sort of get a neutral audience, which is fun. But yeah, no, it wasn't that different, thankfully. The difference is that you're working off usually a research packet, just like on a show, you might be working off a synopsis or an outline. You're going, all right, we need to hit this fact. We need to hit that fact. Maybe we need to cut that for time. So you're not just putting in the comedy. You're also trying to, as opposed to story, like you might have in a lot of shows, you're trying to figure out the jokes and the information, just in a shorter time frame.
Makes sense. And on Sam B right now, like, tell me about the collaborative effort. Like, what does the room work look like?
Sure. Well, right now, obviously we're remote, so it's a little less fun. We don't, like the problem is even writers' rooms, like Bentley saying, they're super fun because you're in the room and you're like bouncing off each other and you're like, yeah, and this happens and this, oh, and then we have it look this way. But on Zoom, you constantly say, no, I'm sorry, you go. No, wait, you go. And the energy is super interrupted because you, instead of feeling like you're yes-anding, you feel like you're being rude, which sucks. But our process is, first of all, we let everyone at the show pitch, no matter if you're a PA, no matter if you're a writer, you can pitch a topic because, in our eyes, you can only write a script if you're a writer, but like, if you're passionate about something that we're not thinking of, we want to hear about it because we want to talk about things people are passionate about, especially on an issues-based show. So we'll pick topics, Kristen Bartlett, who's the other head writer, she and I will pick topics. We'll go to Sam, we'll run through topics. Sam will pick the ones she likes. And then Kristen and I work with the research team. We sort of go like, what do we need to talk about? What shouldn't we be talking about? What's talked about way too much already on other shows? And we'll create an outline. And then we have a meeting with the writers, and the writers, and writers will be like, oh, I don't think that's right. Or we're missing a huge chunk of something. And we have like an in-depth conversation, both about comedy angle, but also, what people feel. Our writers all have comedy backgrounds, but they're all passionate about issues. And so we'll go from there. We'll figure out angles. People pitch bits. One of our writers, Holly Walker, she pitched this bit to have like sort of like a racist monument roadshow type thing to make fun of Antiques Roadshow. And it was super fun. And so we do that. And from there, then the writers pick parts of the script. In the outline will be like part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, part 6. And writers will go, okay, I want 1 and 3, or I really want to do this one. Sometimes writers will write the whole way through if they're hyper passionate. But, we feel like our job is to maximize their ability to write jokes to the information, not to explain. Like, our jobs as head writers is to make it cohesive with information. Their job is to make it funny. And so we get the scripts, and then Kristen and I assemble them. We put them together, and then we have a rewrite session with a couple of the writers and the writer's assistant. Usually in the past, it would have been the full room, but because of the nature of things, we try to limit the size so people don't feel rude when they have ideas.
Gotcha.
And so we rewrite the script. Sam reads it. We rewrite it again. We fact check it with the researchers, and then it goes to air.
It's a honed process.
It's a honed process. We'll also,
and it works.
One thing we'll also do that is more of a late night thing is we have, sometimes if we have holes in a script, we'll post basically a Google Doc, and it's been help us fill this hole, writers. And so we'll just take joke pitches on it. Again, usually that would happen in the room in a more fun form, but it's kind of nice to open a Google Doc and find 20 jokes on one video.
Sure. That's great. I want to just touch on, before we have to go, process itself. And Chris, let's start with you on this. Well, you are toiling away on hour-long scripts all by yourself. What does your process look like? What does a typical day look like when you're just working on scripts, not in production?
I'll start with some good music. And then have some ideas to some good music. I think everything works better with a nice soundtrack. And then I'll write notes, and then sort of build a structure. And I mean, at the moment, I'm very much in days of trying to build a structure of a season. So we've been recommissioned for a second season, which is great. So it's just trying to build the story of that, and then once I
let me interrupt for a second. Just let's drill down on that even more.
Yeah. As
you're trying to formulate the structure of a season, literally, what does that look like? Are you on the computer? Are you writing on notepads? Are you taking walks? What does it look like?
I should do more walks, but I do. It's all of this. It's notes. It's computer. It's when I get bored of one, I move to the next one.
Yeah.
So it's basically my own personal attention deficit, where I just shift around until I'm like, okay, that's now clicking. I can write that. I can basically. Usually the computer feels like the final bit. Sometimes I try and cheat by writing it on the computer first, and then I realize it's not working. So I have to go away, write notes, and it's anything and everything that works. And then just building it like that. It's like, what's next? What's next?
Yeah, and that shifting, there's something about that shifting, isn't there, that can give you a little jump start to tackle something new or tackle something better, or I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? And in this sort of world of lockdown as well, when you've got the family around, sometimes your mind doesn't focus until nighttime, and I'll write late into the night just because there's nothing else going on. You're getting no messages. It feels like a straight shot. But I should probably get a dog or something, and then I could go long, thoughtful walks.
Now's the time. Absolutely. Bentley, I imagine you are on constant deadline. You're going from show to show to show. You're producing some shows, you're show running other shows. Are you just constantly working? Are you constantly writing? What does your life look like?
No, you know what? I'm not doing as much writing anymore. It's more so on the producing side. I have gotten to the point to where I now can really trust people to get the vision out. And so I've learned how to delegate, which was the hardest thing for a writer to do, because you feel like, no, it has to be like this. But I've gotten to the point to where I can let go a little bit and trust the team that I've built around me. And I have a lot of great people that I work with. But I do, when I do go into my writing mode, like Chris said, it is a very lonely place to be. And I have specific parameters that I put on myself. I too like to have great music that's playing with no lyrics, because I have written lyrics on the script on the page before that I'm listening to, and stuff on the page. And I'm a fragrance guy, so I always have incense going. Oh, nice. And so I just like to have just nice, colorful things around when I'm writing. But the process has gotten a lot easier for me once I learned how to relax and let go and not feel like everything is on me. I have people around me because I trust their instincts. So now I have to let them do what they do to make my life easier. And so that was the hardest part for me. But the process, again, it's the same thing. It's late night. I feel like while the world is sleeping, I'm getting something done. So it's interesting. I got away from the writing for a long time and I started directing a lot. And then when I had to get back into writing, I was like, I can't stay awake. What am I gonna do? Maybe I'll try Adderall. Maybe I'll do whatever. I got to stay awake from here. But I got back on my horse and started riding into the sunset again. So that's the process for me.
That's great. Oh my gosh. And Mike, what does your writing process look like? It sounds like there's so much management involved. Do you actually still get to write?
I think most of the rewriting Kristen and I get to do is when we're assembling, because assembling, you're taking, 3 to 4 disparate pieces from 3 to 4 disparate, different voices, and you kind of put them together. So that's on the regular. The most writing we do is sort of punch up, revising. Chris and I will also often write sketches for the show because they're fun to do and we want to. So, a lot of it is management. A lot of it's punch up. A lot of it's just, going like, this joke doesn't work. Can you guys give me another joke? And then what have you. But my background is joke writing. So there'll be times, writers will come to me or Kristen and be like, hey, I don't know what to do here. Do you have ideas? And we'll help them with that. We'll help them get through that. For a couple writers, this is their first gig ever. And we want to be supportive. We want them to feel like, they have a safety net, because probably all of us have worked at places where we didn't have that safety net, or you didn't have someone going, yes, you're okay. But my writing process itself, much like Bentley, I listen to music, no lyrics. I listen to, this won't surprise anybody, mostly video game soundtracks. I try to listen to things that sort of have a mood to them, but also don't overwhelm, so I can't listen to like fucking Holst the Planets, but I can listen to like sort of like a subtle, nice little thing. And I have little playlists I do, sort of like Chris, I move around. I have, because I'm a big fucking nerd, I have 4 different laptops. So I have a Mac, that's a work laptop. I have a tiny laptop I'll take into a park. I have this where I'm recording on is in my room, which is my gaming laptop. And I'll move around. So like when I'm rewriting, I'll be at this desk. When I'm doing phone calls, I'll be standing over there in my kitchen on another laptop. I just try to move around a lot, especially now because I live in a 1-bedroom apartment.
Right, we're crazy, man. Writers, we are insane, aren't we?
Yeah. Psychosis, surely.
Absolutely. This has been terrific. It's really been a pleasure talking to you all. Let's get the plugs first. Chris, Bloodlands, is it out already? Do you know where people can see it?
It's out. It's on Acorn TV. I think it finished last week.
Great.
I think.
So go get your free Acorn week, watch Bloodlands, and then keep it for season 2.
Whatever. Let it expire, change your name, do it again next year.
Listen, I can't condone it. They may be a sponsor. Bentley, is Family Time? Is that what's up next?
No, you know what? I did 91 episodes of Family Time.
Holy cow.
Yeah, for the Bounce TV network. I don't know if we're going to get reordered. It makes sense for us to do 9 more, but I'm not sure what's going to happen there. I know I have a new show called Millennials where we shot 6 episodes, and it's on the All Black network, which is like an AMC network. It's called All Black. That does not mean that others can't watch it. And then I've got Dad Stop Embarrassing Me with Jamie Foxx and David Allen Greer on Netflix, which premieres on the 14th of April. And awesome. Yeah, so and then next for me, I'm doing another show. There was a rapper once upon a time named MC Light, and I'm doing a new show with her as well for the AMC networks as well, called Partners in Rhyme. So that'll premiere sometimes in November, but we start in about 10 days.
Oh, wow. Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you.
That seems terrifying.
No, it's great. I'm better when I'm working. I'm telling you, I'm so much better when I'm working. I got to keep me busy.
Well, you're certainly busy. And Mike, we talked about Silent Hill 2. People can check that out, the book. And Sam B is ongoing, right? Like you're not on hiatus right now or anything?
Well, this week we are on hiatus, but by the week we're recording, I think the week we air, we will be back. Wednesdays, 10:30 on TBS, Superstation. You can go to YouTube. We also have clips on YouTube. Please watch us and enjoy us.
It continues, like, it's so consistently great. I feel like I've been watching from the beginning and there just hasn't been a dip in quality. It's so smart. It's so funny. That's a testament to all of you. Let's find out what you are watching on television these days. What's getting you excited or inspired? What are you talking about with your the people in your home or your room or in your life? Chris, what are you watching?
We watched Michaela Cole's show, I May Destroy You, which was pretty incredible. She was, she's kind of a genius and was phenomenal. And the geek side of me has really enjoyed catching up on The Expanse, the latest season of The Expanse on Amazon. That was great. Nice world building. It's really immersive.
Yeah. Good answers. Bentley, what are you watching these days?
Not comedy. I usually don't watch a lot of comedy because I don't want it to influence what I'm doing at all. But I'm, of course, I can't wait for Ozark to come back. I loved Ozark the last 3 seasons. The last season was interesting, I would say. I got into this Lupin series on Netflix that it was rather interesting.
Is it good? The French one?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, at first I was like, but then I got into it, and I see they're getting ready to drop a new season, so I'm interested in that. Your Honor, I just finished Your Honor. I hate Your Honor because it was done great, but I hated the son. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. I'm not going to.
No, I haven't seen that.
But I wanted to kill Bryan Cranston's son. I wanted to choke. I've never been mad at a character to the point I had to turn off the TV. So I'm watching a lot of that stuff. Of course, I just finished the Final Four and all that stuff. And just anything that's interesting that a friend recommends. So any good recommendations, I'll take them.
Well, we've got a couple already. And Mike, what else do you want to recommend?
I am watching a sitcom called I'm Sorry that I found on Netflix. Someone recommended to me. It's really fun. Because my background is joke writing, I love dialogue. So any show that has funny dialogue, I'm in love with. And I'm also watching The Falcon and the Winter Soldier because I like to enjoy TV once in a while.
It's really fun, isn't it?
It's super fun.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like a classic sort of 80s action drama, but with an enormous budget.
Right, exactly. It's like a buddy comedy with Disney money.
Yeah. I'll recommend a comedy show to you, which someone on this podcast recommended to me like a month ago, and my wife and I have torn through them, called Stathlet's Flats.
It's great.
Oh my God.
What's it on?
It's on HBO Maximum. You can check it out. There are 2 seasons, and I think another is coming. Ridiculously funny.
Very funny. I forget his name, the lead actor in that, but he keeps popping up in other things like The Great, which was excellent as well.
Oh, I love The Great.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. I forgot he was in that. He's so good. And his sister, who's on the show, is on What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, she's
which is also fantastic. Yeah. Unbelievable. These are all the recommendations. Thank you guys so much for chatting today. This was a real pleasure. Good luck with all the stuff. I'm excited to see what you're all churning out.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you very much.
Oh, The Righteous Gemstones too. The Righteous Gemstones is funny too.
It is good.
Watch that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys.
Forever Dog. This has been a Forever Dog production. Executive produced by Brett Boehm, Joe Cilio, and Alex Ramsey. For more original podcasts, please visit foreverdogpodcasts.com and subscribe to our shows on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Keep up with the latest Forever Dog news by following us on Twitter and Instagram @ForeverDogTeam and liking our page on Facebook.